Oh, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Rob Russ.
And I'm Edward Anderson. Are we doing that for the lives too? I've got to introduce myself during the lives. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing it for a live. We're live now.
So we are live. Yeah. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm really well. I'm excited to be doing this week's live with you. There's a lot going on in the news. I've got a funny story for everybody today, and you've got something that's all a little bit serious. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here, welcome. It's great to have you here. This is The Unspoken Truth, where Ed and I have a look at the mainstream media, and we like to pull back the curtain about what's really going on. You can join us over on Telegram, on Twitter, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're available on all of those platforms, so make sure you pop on over there. And don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe here on the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Trump and his indictment. He was indicted on a handful of charges again just in the last couple of days, and he seems to be like Obi-Wan Kenobi. If you strike me down, I'm going to become stronger. I've also got some information around the era of global boiling. You're not going to want to miss that.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be a fun one today, man.
Apparently, I'm boiling to death in like 4 layers of jumpers and jackets here in Sydney. Couldn't figure out why I was so cold before, and I went over to the door, and the door was wide open, and the kitchen window's wide open. I'm like, I wonder it's so cold in here. Closed everything, and I'm like, era of global warming, my ass. What are you talking about? It's like, just ridiculous. The left are losing their minds, and it just seems to be a series of escalations that are leading to all sorts of things. I remember when I was a kid, Ed, you're just a couple of years older than me, but you'd remember this as well. Remember that thing called the greenhouse effect?
Of course.
The greenhouse effect. Like, what do you mean? And it's like the powers that be assume that everybody knows what a greenhouse actually is. And then that didn't work. So we went to the era of global warming, and then we went to, that wasn't working either, because kind of global warming sounds nice. Sounds nice, like it's warming up. So then we went to climate change. That's not working. And now we've gone to global boiling. So we're moving up the escalation ladder, but the powers that be are so dumb, they're dumb as a box of rocks, that they can't figure out what to say. What they should really say is that the weather is going to kill us all. And then they'll really once and for all get everybody on their side. Maybe.
You know, I've been working, I've been doing some research, and I've been working on, I've been compiling a list of these global catastrophe predictions that have been made over the past 100 years.
Plague, war, finance, and drought and famine is what it's actually coming to.
I'm talking about climate-specific warnings about climate. And for the past 100 years, the predictions they made, every single prediction has failed to come true. Mm-hmm. Not one has actually happened. And these guys have a god-awful track record. Just goes to show, listen, everyone, this is not about global warming. This is about control. This is about an agenda.
I'll show you exactly what that agenda is. I've got a video that shows you that exact thing. Was there one prediction in particular that stood out for you? I think we were in the coming to the next ice age is the funniest one for me. And I'm like, ice age in Australia? I've never even seen snow. What are you talking about?
The ice caps at both the North Pole and South Pole were supposed to be gone like 10 years ago. And they've actually
where were they going to go?
They've actually grown in size.
Hey, stop spouting deep state media stuff and rhetoric that's out there. Ladies and gentlemen, we did a show yesterday about a company that controls the narrative around the climate change. Just remind everybody, Ed, what that company is called.
See, CCN, Climate Change Now.
Climate Change Narrative is what I'm going to change the name to. And there's more than 400 news outlets around the world, ladies and gentlemen, that subscribe to CCN. And they get their media from, in relation to climate change, that is, from this location. So that's why you're seeing the same things over and over and over again. You can turn on Al Jazeera right now, and I promise you that the news on BBC will be very similar to what's on Al Jazeera, to what's on ABC, to what's on CNN. All of those places are reporting on the same things because they're looking at what's trending in social media. They look at what's trending online, and they want to trend as well. So they're the ones that create the news, but they're rarely creating the news. They're more reporting on the news. But if you're reporting on the news and you're getting it from a dodgy source, then you're reporting the same dodgy thing over and over again, which is what they all seem to be doing. So
this is one, you're absolutely right, Rob. This is one big coordinated effort and
Yes.
there is an actual group created called Climate Change Now. We did a whole report on it yesterday.
Yeah.
And look at this is an actual honest to God organization specifically designed to disseminate climate change propaganda. And they're founded in 2019 by a couple of left-wing journalist operations in New York, and they have well over 400 global media outlets that subscribe to the service. And their job is just to cover that one topic alone, climate change. And they instruct all of these organizations how to insert these climate change warnings into every news story that comes down the pike, every single news event, anything that has a negative, blame everything on climate change. And so this is the most orchestrated, global, sophisticated propaganda scheme that's ever been created. And so this is all propaganda, but it's very sophisticated.
You know, when you wake up in the morning and it's like early in the morning, you sit on the edge of your bed, you kind of give yourself a second. Like I got out of bed this morning and I stood up and I took 2 steps and I kicked my toe. Fucking kicked my toe. Fuck. And I bent down, and as I bent down and I grabbed my toe, I went, fucking climate change. Damn it. Everything needs to be as a result of climate change.
Well, I mean, joking aside, we have to joke about it because that's the only real weapon we have is to, is
to make fun of it.
Yeah, make fun of it. But just think of these children out there who are consuming this on a daily basis. They've got to assume that their future is crap. That they're not going to have a future. They're scaring the hell out of our kids, and it's all made up. It's all nonsense. It's all to achieve an agenda. But I'm sure there's got to be a huge issue with mental health regarding this issue. People who think, why bother? Why bother doing this? Why bother doing that? I'm going to be dead in 10 years. And according, because of world, right? I mean, there's got to be, the needle must have been moved in the mental health thing.
When you talk about children, that's a very important point because children, they get exposed to news and media via social media. And if the only social media that they get exposed to is a left-leaning climate change narrative, which is what's on TikTok, what's on Instagram, what's on Facebook, and all of these places in social media, and it probably wouldn't be so bad if it was just other people saying, oh, the henny penny, the sky is falling. If it's other people, you just probably wouldn't pay all that much attention to it, even if you were a kid. But the problem is it's people in authority that are actually saying it. That's prime ministers and presidents and politicians that are all saying it. But the left would say, well, Rob, if it's those people that are saying it, maybe it is true. Well, maybe, but show me, because you can't prove it. You just can't prove it. There's nothing that you can do to prove it to me. And no prediction that you've made in the past has ever come true. So why would I ever believe anything that you're going to say into the future? It's just absolutely ridiculous. Let's leave that topic and come back to it.
Okay.
I want to play with that and have some fun. But tell us a little bit about what happened to the president and what was he indicted for? What happened this time?
Okay, so I had to talk about this today because it is such an important topic. For historical purposes, I wanted to make sure that we covered this the day that it happened because this is going to be an evergreen topic. 20 years from now, I want to make sure that we documented, this event. This is a very serious event. Now, it is silly and in one aspect, but in the other aspect, it's very, very serious because what happened yesterday to Donald Trump. I did a report that we're going to show pretty quickly here, so we'll get into the actual counts. But let's just talk a little bit about the implications here. We are now in a state where, in the most democratic society in the world, theoretically, we have our politicians resorting to dictatorial, to Stalinistic type strategies, where they're criminalizing their enemy. If they can't defeat their enemy at the ballot box, they're gonna criminalize them. That's what this is about. And the precedent that they're setting here is that no other politician from here on in is going to be allowed to criticize or challenge the result of an election, because that's what Trump did. He thought he had won. And he was pushing back on whether he had lost or not. That's all he was doing. And they say because he did that, because he expressed his opinion on that topic, they're going to criminalize them. So they're criminalizing, again, free speech. And if they're allowed to get away with this, no free speech is safe. Now, we've been talking about free speech a lot in the channel. Pretty much a day does not go by where we don't talk about how freedom of speech is under attack. And you and I, we know we can be deplatformed at any moment. The government can do whatever they want to us. The government, look, your bank account isn't safe. Your car isn't safe. Your home isn't safe. Your money isn't safe. Your freedoms are not safe. They can take everything away from you. This is the power that the government yields. And if they're not kept in check, if they're allowed to get away with stuff like this, then, then our freedoms are going to be taken away, not a bit at a time, but a chunk at a time. And this is the most blazing example of that. This is outright tyranny, and this is banana republic type stuff. And people, look, whether you like Trump, if this happened, if this was all reversed, I'd be filing the same complaint. This is not what freedom of speech is about. Anyway.
So just thank you for sharing all of that, because it's an important conversation, right? It doesn't matter what side of politics you're on or what you believe in. You should just be able to say whatever you want without inciting violence. That's the pretense of it, right? But what I'm seeing and the way I understand it as an outsider observing it all, I understand that the states are the ones that take care of the elections, right? So when you have a federal election, it's the state that actually runs it. They organize it, they administer it. There's the people there that look after it. Have I got that correct?
Yes, you're right, except for the very end. So at the very end, which was taking place on January 6th that day, is they were certifying it, right? They're certifying the election. So there's a final process that say, all right, they gavelled it, but it's a rubber stamp event, right? It's okay. We accept all of the states' results, and so it's a rubber stamp event, but it is a formal event. And what Trump was doing that day is he was telling people, listen, go down there, let them know that it was a peaceful protest. He was saying, let's just let them know, just basically shout out, we don't want you to certify it. I mean, he knew it was going to be certified. I mean, he knew it, right?
Yeah, because it's a rubber stamp that's happened lots of times before.
But it's just a formal protest, kind of a.
We don't believe in it. This is what it is.
So you
spilled over into something else.
Yeah. So your analysis is correct. That's the way our system works. And then there's that final process, this is formality of certifying the election, and that's what was going on that particular day.
So are they trying? So they're indicting him. So they've charged him with a crime. So are they then? So
by the way, a crime that does not appear on the books. This is a made-up crime.
Made it up.
Yes.
they figured it out. They not in legislation by the Attorney General or something. They just made this shit up.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, before we tread on that, what I understand is what they're trying to do, because the states run the election. What the governors can do is we're just not going to put the guy on the ballot because of this. There's too much uncertainty. Is that how it works, or does everybody have to be put on the ballot if they've been nominated? And can anybody throw their hat into the ring to run for the president of the United States? That's how I thought it would work.
Sure. Anybody can throw their hat in the ring as long as they meet the minimum requirements.
The criteria. Yeah.
Now, one of the qualifications that disqualifies you from being president is being a convicted felon.
Right. So that's. But I understood, even if he doesn't get a conviction, that's what they're trying to do, is that state by state, they'll go, no, not putting him on the ballot, not putting him on the ballot. That's how I understand they were trying to approach it and trying to unseat him, right? Because you're not going to be able to make any of the charges stick because he's got better lawyers, and it's just going to go on forever. And he hasn't been convicted of anything. So if he hasn't been convicted of anything, we can just drag the chain on this thing, drag it all the way out. You'll be the president eventually, and then off we go again.
Well, making it onto the ballots is not a state-by-state decision.
I see. That's what I understood.
Yeah, right. Well, the minimum requirements are federal requirements, right?
Right.
So as long as, right.
And then the federal government says, all right, these people are on the ballot, go ahead and run the election.
Now,
here are the names.
Now, the individual states, the different parties and they might have their own little process for how they nominate someone. Like some people do caucuses, some states do. Each state has their own little formal way of getting somebody onto the ballot. But that is a party issue inside of the state. It's not a state.
It's not an admin issue at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we're watching this report, why don't you put a comment there for us in the live stream? Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what your thoughts and opinions are. And let's take a little look at Ed's report today.
Shout out to everyone in the Hey Ed, what's up? Pretty much have to cover because of its significance.
Shout out to everyone in the, I didn't quite catch that
in the Hey Ed WhatsApp group. I got a couple of people watching. Who's watching? Hey guys, who's watching? I see two people in the group. Anyway, go ahead.
Tune in, folks, and let us know where you're from, and we'd love to hear your feedback as well. All right, let's take a look at the report.
Okay, so this is a topic that I pretty much have to cover because of its significance. So yesterday, they finally did it. They indicted President Trump for the third time. And in the process, they demonstrated their fear of this man as well as their hatred for America. But could they have inadvertently just gotten him reelected? Interesting question. Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's get this on the official historical record. I'm going to show you a clip showing their announcement of the indictment against President Trump.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail.
It says the defendant, Donald J. Trump, was the 45th president of the United States and a candidate for re-election in 2020. The defendant lost the 2020 presidential election. Despite having lost, Jack Smith says the defendant was determined to remain in power. So for more than 2 months following Election Day on November 3rd, 2020, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election and that he had actually won.
Okay, so let's be clear. What they're indicting him for is for not believing the results of the election. He thought that there was fraudulent activity. Look at, so he had an opinion, and he stated that opinion publicly. But they're indicting him for just saying that. So they're setting a precedence now that no other candidate ever in the future can challenge the results of an election, even if there is outright evidence of fraud. This indictment is unprecedented in American history, going after a political opponent. That is not what America is supposed to be about. And the Democrats are in a rush to get this done. Look at this clip.
What's your sense of how Merrick Garland has handled this case thus far?
Well, I think the appointment of Jack Smith was a brilliant stroke. His experience at The Hague made it clear that he was ready for this, and he's proceeded as fast as he could.
Okay, I didn't have the whole clip in there, but he goes on to say that it's important that we get this done quickly. Why? Because they don't want this guy to be elected. They need to get him indicted before Election Day of 2024, because felons are not allowed to run for president, right? That's why they're doing this. That's how scared they are of this man, especially when they look at their current Democratic nominee, President Biden, and they're thinking, geez, this is not a very strong candidate. So we have to destroy President Trump before the election. That's why they're in a hurry. This is what happens in societies that don't respect democratic principles. This was standard operating procedure in the Soviet era. Remember this favorite quote by Lev Beria, an infamous henchman of Stalin? This is a guy who was put in charge of putting down any kind of opposition to Stalin. And this was the Soviet philosophy for keeping their political opponents in check. Just show me the man and I'll find you the crime. Okay. The idea being is if they want to get you, they'll get you. And this is what happens in an authoritarian state. And the deep state and the swamp in America, this is the way they operate. If you pose a threat to us in any way, we're going to find a way to take you down. They've been after this man ever since the day when he first announced that he was running for president. And now they stepped over a line that they never should have stepped over. A tweet from Mark Levin. It's official. Unelected reckless prosecutors and unelected Democratic DC grand jurors are trying to decide the presidential election. Democrat DAs and the earlier indictment, the same thing. Talk about attempting to deny voters the right to choose the next president. That is what this is all about. Exactly right. They're trying to deny you your right to choose your next president. So why did I pose that question? Could the deep state have just reelected Donald Trump? Well, because this is a very divided country. It is basically a 48-48 country with like 2 or 4% of people in the middle who are undecided, who are persuadable, right? Well, this indictment did not do anything to diminish the enthusiasm by the people who already support Trump. In fact, all this indictment does do, it makes those people even more loyal, even more excitable, and even more motivated. And then for those people in the middle there who are persuadable, if a couple percentage of those people just don't like the idea of an authoritarian state dictating who they can vote on, that small sliver of people who believe in freedom and rule of law and democracy, they could vote for Trump, not because they necessarily like Trump, but because they don't like the authoritative police state. I told you for more than a year now that this next election is going to be filled with fireworks because these people are desperate. They're going to pull out every dirty trick they can think of. But none of their dirty tricks have worked so far. But instead of learning their lessons, they double down and triple down because these people are terrified at the prospect of Donald Trump being back in office. So in the comments below, let me know what you think. Do you think this is a legitimate prosecution? Or do you think this is a political persecution? And do you think this will help Trump or hurt Trump? But I think we can all agree that the government is not here to help us. It's not here to help you. You are on your own. Don't look to the government to help you. They're your adversary. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Ed Anderson, live from Minnesota, signing out.
Well done, mate. That was a really comprehensive American thought process that you laid out there for us, and I really appreciate you doing that. The thing that I like the most about doing these podcasts with you, Ed, is that I really get to know what it means to be an American and what it means, like at your level, where you see, Western society is dictated a lot by American society and American values and your family values and the way that your society runs and whatnot. And I remember when I first got a bit older and I traveled a little bit, I came across Americans and like, where am I from? I'm from Australia. And that was like a massive novelty for them. Like, oh my God, Australia, right? Yeah. And I felt like I knew so much about Americans, but they didn't know hardly anything about Aussies, right? That's why it was such a novelty for them. And rightly so, because your society is such a well-formed society and so much is happening. And yeah, it's really good to see those reports and see you taking charge of that. So I appreciate you sharing that with the world, man. It's cool.
Oh, you're welcome. Although, as you know, my heart aches for what's going on to our country. That, the principles that America were founded on are immutable. They will always be true. They will always be what made this country great to begin with. The question is, are we going to maintain those values? And those values are being tossed to the wayside more and more with each subsequent generation. And that's the result of this ongoing drumbeat by the socialists and the communists in our educational system and by our parents. We have really bad parenting and a really bad school system. All of our problems in our country can be pointed toward those two things.
What's the solution?
Well, okay. So there is that pendulum theory, right? That we get to a point where people have had enough, and they start reverting back to the mean, right? Like in trading, you got the mean level. You get too far one direction, you revert back. So there's that kind of theory. I mean, we all have heard the phrase, at least you and I have heard that phrase, soft men create soft times, hard men create hard times. There's that progression in society in general. We're at the point right now where soft men are creating hard times. Okay, so if you look out, well, then in theory, if that pendulum, if that circular, whatever you call it, historical trends is intact, well, what's coming up now? Well, we got soft men creating hard times right now. So hard times should create hard men, and then hard men will create soft times, right? So
better times, easier
better times. So we're like 2 generations away from.
We're not going to see it, unfortunately.
From getting back to normal. No, it doesn't have to take that long, but you get the idea that the flow of things. There is a point. I mean, socialists. It's very easy for a young person to be convinced that socialism is a cool idea. Because they don't know any better. And they're like, hey, well, it's free stuff. Free stuff. Yeah, sounds good to me. Why should I have to work so hard when I can get free stuff? That makes perfect sense to me. But then when they have to start working and they see their paycheck, and they got to pay taxes, then maybe they're not so much a socialist anymore. It's very easy to be a socialist when you're not using your own money.
You want to be a socialist? Okay, let's start with taking all of your wealth and all of your property and dividing it by the people that are around you. What should we start with? Your car or your house? Which one? Let me know. And or your bank account. Which one should we do? And your fridge as well. By the way, I'm going to go and divide the fridge and the pantry and all of that stuff as well. Can we begin there? Do you want the rice or the pasta? I'll let you keep one. You decide. Like, that's just how ridiculous it is, man. But that's what socialism is. They want you to be completely dependent upon the government for a handout for everything.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen those man on the street interviews on YouTube, right? Where they catch these people. Say, all right, do you believe in open borders? Oh yeah, I think everyone should be allowed in. So, well, we have so how many people should we put down for you to come live with? Why
don't I have a spare room? What does it matter, man? Like,
that's right.
They can sleep on your couch, or they can sleep in your bedroom. Get another bed.
That's right. That's right.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, so they have no concept of how things work. Now and then there's also the perennial argument when it comes to money, finances, financial system, where you got to ask yourself: is our Federal Reserve, are these people that incompetent, or is the destruction of our U.S. dollar and our economy, is it by design?
Yeah, it's all completely by design, right? Because it's all about control, and I have some more to say on that. In a couple of minutes as well with the climate change things. I want to close out this little segment by reminding people that you can head over to Twitter and follow The Unspoken Truth. If you're watching live on Twitter, please give us a follow over there. Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. But I find some really great news over there. And one of the things that kind of was grinding my gears a little bit about American society was the interview that came out just in the last day with Tucker Carlson and Devon Archer. So if people don't know, Devon Archer was Hunter Biden's business partner, and he kind of goes right back to the start and explains how they moved from political lobbying to peddling influence, so to speak. And the way that Devon kind of describes what their business was, and so Rosemont Seneca and what they did. So in a nutshell, I'll let you go and watch it, and I'll find the link and put it in the description for everybody. But in a nutshell, what he was saying that, if you work in Washington, you need people that can help you get access to things. And because his dad, Hunter's dad, Joe, that is, was a politician, he could help him get things done. So if he was working with a diplomat overseas and he was trying to get something done and he needed to get to the front of the line for a visa, or they needed to get some documentation, or we needed to get something from somebody in government, his old man could pick up the phone and help him out. Or he could just call and say, hey, it's Hunter Biden here. I was wondering if you could help me to do this. And someone would go, Hunter Biden? Like, is Joe is that your dad? Yeah, it's my dad. And they would just work through it like that, right? So when you listen to the way that Devon Archer kind of portrays it, it's actually a pretty smart business model. Because if you work in government and you're working with diplomats and you're working with other companies that are trying to do business in your country, if you can sit in the middle of all of that and put the deals together, you don't actually have to provide a service. You don't have to actually go and fetch a product or a service to give to them or to deliver to them. And really all he was doing is acting as a congruent between the people that wanted to work in America and the people that were able to benefit and get the upside of it. So it all seems pretty innocent, and it actually seems like a really good business model. He wasn't providing legal services because he's a lawyer by trade, Hunter Biden. He was providing access, right? And the way that he was providing access is really not unlike how other people in Washington do the same things. And there's been plenty of people before that have peddled the names of people that they know to get the access that they need. But here's where the rub is. It's because Joe Biden came out and said, no, I never had any dealings. I never spoke to any of my son's partners, none of that, none of those dealings. And in some way, I could see how that would be true, because Hunter never needed his old man to do anything other than go, hey, it's Hunter Biden. And he just said his name, so he could. But so I can give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt there by saying that, right? But in reality, Tucker asked Devon Archer, when did you first meet Joe Biden? I met him in 2002 or something like that, he said. And he goes, over the years, how many times have you actually met with him? And he goes, I don't know, I want to say 20. So Devon Archer is Hunter Biden's direct business partner. They're partners in the business, Rosemont Seneca. And Joe Biden's out there saying, no, I never met with anybody to do with business or anything. And if I did, we never talked about business. But then Devon goes on to say that while they're in a meeting, so Devon and Hunter, they're in a meeting with these other people. He gets on the phone and calls his dad, and puts it on speaker, and he's talking to his dad. And it's like everything Joe Biden said about not talking to his son about his business dealings is all wrong. It's all a lie. The whole thing is a lie. And it's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of Bill Clinton when he pointed at the camera, right? I did not have sexual relations. And I'm scratching my head going, isn't a blowjob sexual relations? What?
Well, that depends on what your definition of is.
Or your definitions of sexual and relations. Yeah. So it's all about optics. That was really the first time that they tried to change the dictionary. And we've seen them change the dictionary a couple of times this year where they're talking about a recession. Well, that's not a recession. That's not how a recession works. That's not what it is. It is, man. Look, I could see it in the book. It's right here. I'm pointing at it. Like, no, that's the wrong book. That's not how it is. So it kind of, you give people the benefit of the doubt, right? You're innocent until you're proven guilty, but then they kind of out themselves with these silly acts that they actually go and do. And yeah, Devon Archer has really outed Hunter Biden, and he's really outed Joe Biden as well. In just literally a 10-minute interview with Tucker Carlson. I think it's part 1 of 2. Only goes for 10 minutes or something like that, but it's worth having a look at. I just wanted to get your reaction on that and see what you thought about that.
Well, that's an interesting point of view that you put on it. Okay, so listen, there is that old saying in business, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. All right, and
that's what he was doing. And when you look at it, everyone's like really critical of him, saying, he didn't do anything. He's not a lawyer. What does he know? All this bullshit. And it's like, yeah, but he's got like a giant network. And he's got a giant network because of his name, and that is very valuable in business.
Wall Street is littered with idiots, all right? But they went to the right schools, they joined the right clubs, they know the right people, right? And so they got favoritism, they got in on a deal before it went public, and so knowing the right people, having access is everything in business. It saves you a lot of time. It cut, you can cut a lot of corners. You can cut through a lot of red tape if you know the right people. Right? People, I'll sign off on that. Sure, I know Gensler. Yeah, yeah. So you want to open up, start a new exchange? You want to call it FTX? Sure, I know your parents. I'm going to school with your parents. Yeah. I'll sign off on it. So knowing that people makes a lot of. Now, however, okay, this is the difference for me. This is the rub for me. This man was the vice president of the United States and soon to be president of the United States at the time when this is coming. When you have people who can set foreign policy based, and they're exposed now. They're exposed to possible blackmailing event. Then, I mean, look what happened to our strategic petroleum reserve here in America. It's emptied. And where did that oil go? It went to China.
Oil went to China so they could make petrol products and diesel to put in their warships to threaten Taiwan and you.
There you go. I mean, we didn't use it to lower the cost of gasoline in our own country. It goes in. Come on, guys. How much stinking to high heaven?
What about all the Shahid drones in Ukraine where they pull them apart and they're full of components from Western companies, and the missiles the cruise missiles, the caliber cruise missiles that the Russians fire at the Ukrainians, they find the crashed ones, they pull them apart, and there's 136 different components on the inside of it, and they all come from anywhere but Russia. Yeah. There's a book on my shelf there called No Better Enemy.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. You're just funding the enemy to actually keep it going.
This is all about money. Everything goes on in Washington, D.C., and foreign policy is regarding money. J.P. Morgan is running the shots. J.P. Morgan is more powerful. Jamie Dimon is much more influential and powerful than the President of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's one for you along that vein with Jamie Dimon and these people that own these businesses. A lot of people don't know, but there's a pipeline that runs through Ukraine from Russia that pumps gas. Don't you think they should turn that pipeline off? And what about when Russia sell all their oil products to India at a reduced market rate? India refine them into the petroleum products that the world needs and then sells them back to Europe. We're funding the war directly by buying petroleum products from the Indians and continuing to perpetuate the cycle. I remember, and I'm no Putin apologist or Russian bro, but everything that we see in the optics of all of these things all of the time is just only what they want you to see. I remember when Russia went into Syria, because the only foreign base that is outside of Russia happens to be in Syria. And that's where they had a presence. And the war wasn't going very well. And Bashar al-Assad was having a hard time with ISIS. And the Russians came in. And the reason he was having such a hard time is because there's all these different factions. It's actually a civil war. Then the Kurds are in there. And then ISIS are in there. And people are fighting against the government. They're fighting against each other. And it's just a big giant mess. And the Russians came in and said, if you don't have a Syrian flag on your shoulder, you are the enemy. We will destroy you. If you're not fighting, we're the Russians and we're on the Syrian side, and we're going to bomb and destroy everything that's not part of Syria. So if you're on that side, you better think quickly about getting a flag on your shoulder or putting your weapons down and going away, because we're coming for you. And the very first thing that they did was they went and bombed all of the trucks. Yeah, and I could find the footage for you. In this footage, there's trucks of maybe 500 petrol tankers leaving Syria and crossing the border into what country do you think?
Russia?
Turkey.
From Syria into where?
No, Turkey, man.
Turkey. Oh, yeah.
Into Turkey. Yeah, and Erdogan's in Turkey, jumping up and down, losing his shit, going, there's a war there. The Kurds are there. And American F-16s are launching from Turkish air bases in support, flying close air support sorties for the Kurds, because there's special forces guys on the ground, JTAC's calling in the jets to go and bomb the ISIS troops. The F-16 would land, and then Turkish F-16s would take off and go and bomb the Kurds. Meanwhile, all of the oil is coming out of Syria, going into Turkey, being illegally sold and processed in that part of the world. And the Russians went, well, the whole reason ISIS are able to continue is because they're being funded by the illegal oil that they keep stealing from Syria. So why don't we just go and bomb those convoys of trucks? They won't have any more trucks. We'll cut them off, cut their money off. We don't have to bomb the oil refinery. We're not going to do that. That's Syria's asset. And then it all goes away. But they put this front on like, henny penny, the sky is falling. ISIS are the worst people in the world. Okay, ISIS fighters are driving across the border in a semi-trailer full of oil, and they're like, yeah, come in, man, just put it over there for you. Yeah, here's your payment, by the way. Here's a drink, here's some food. See you in the next run. Bye. And they're ISIS people. No better enemy, man. No better enemy than just keep funding them, keep funding the war machine. So the Turks are getting all of the money from the oil, but then they're actually going and launching airstrikes against the people that are trying to stop the place where the oil is coming from. My head is going to explode, blow.
It's never that simple, right? Whatever headline the mainstream media is giving you about anything, especially war-related, it's not that simple.
That's the unspoken truth of it all, isn't it? Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's not necessarily bad guys and good guys and bad guys. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to war.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. All right, well, I think if Donald Trump does get himself into trouble and he finds himself in court, they're only going to make him more powerful and stronger as well. But it's also the reverse might be true as well.
If they succeed in this, it's going to be a really black day for America, because the implications are profound going forward. If they're allowed to get away with it, if they're going to be allowed to criminalize their opposition, then whoever happens to be in charge could do the same thing to their opponents, right?
I never thought that we would end up in the banana republic of the United States of America.
Well, yeah,
we're drifting very close to that, aren't we?
I never thought that a lot of things would have happened. We're in bizarro world, man, on so many levels. And it's so weird. I mean, people have to understand these are not only crazy, these are precarious times on multiple levels, politically, financially, economically,
and socially, particularly socially. Yeah.
And you just get the sense that we are coming apart at the seams, and you get the sense that this is by freaking design. There are people behind this who've orchestrated this chaos, and they've got big and while we're busy, causing divisions in our society, and while we're busy hating each other, hating whichever group you happen to be in, the other side is loving it because it makes us less united, it makes us less powerful, and it gives them a better chance to implement their nefarious plans. So
the Chinese and the WEF are going to take over without firing a shot. And I'll close out by saying this, when we're busy fighting each other and you're busy with your head down fighting with the so-called opposition, the enemy are maneuvering on you. And that's exactly what's happening. The enemy are the WEF, the World Health Organization, the United Nations. Those people are maneuvering on us because they've sowed all the discourse into our society. This is a nice little segue. I want to kick off. I didn't have any graphics at the start of the show there. Sorry about that. I wasn't quite ready for it because we haven't done so many live, so I forgot about it. But here they are. I want to transition here, folks, and I want to give everybody a little bit of a warning as I play the first video because there's a whole bunch of screaming and shouting. I'll turn it down, but I don't want you to be listening and go, oh my God, screaming and shouting, and then grabbing for your phone if you're listening to this, or grabbing for your speakers or whatever it is. So I'll turn it down a little bit, but just let you know that there's warning coming. So we all know that Guterres, the idiot from the United Nations, came out and said the era of global warming is over and the era of global boiling is here. I want to show you the reaction to that because here we are where there's all sorts of chaos in the world, and this is the thing that Australian politicians are grabbing onto. It's very strange. The people from the Greens Party and the Teals and even in the Labor Party are saying the same thing, and there's a bunch of independents that we have in our parliament saying the same thing. They're parroting exactly the same thing that the United Nations is. Not only the Climate Change Now media organization is driving the narrative, but actually the United Nations, an unelected body of bureaucrats that are not elected by our country, is driving the narrative here in Australian politics. So Australian politics, the Greens Party have several seats, and the Teals and the Greens and the Teals come together with people from left factions of the Labor Party to control the government. So essentially, by proxy, the United Nations and their rhetoric is controlling the Australian Parliament and the Australian government. And the green policies that are going on with trying to get rid of coal and gas and use renewables is being driven by the United Nations. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not about green energy. This is not about fake climate change, fake global warming, fake ice ages. It's not anything to do with any of that. All of it, 1000% of it, has got to do with controlling you. Because when they control the power, when they control the electricity, they'll control every single aspect of your life. Let me show you this video, Ed, and as I said, just watch your ears because this guy is quite crazy. So I'll leave us on the screen because I want to see your face and your reaction as we go. Here we go.
Warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
A few moments later.
Planet is literally cooking. Mate, you can shut your mouth. You can shut your mouth. People are dying.
Senator McKim, resume your seat.
And sociopaths like you.
Senator McKim,
I'm not going to cop interjections from sociopaths like Senator Canavan.
Senator
I will
McKim, resume
not
your
cop it.
seat.
And what they've got to answer for is death, disease, displacement, starvation, people dying of thirst, arable farming lands turning into desert, and most likely billions of people dead by the end of this century, and the collapse of the ecosystems that actually support all human life on this planet. That's what people like Senator Canavan have got to answer for.
Have you ever seen a lefty lose his mind so badly?
Oh yeah. That's just another Tuesday. Yeah, that's.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in Australian Parliament.
Yeah. I don't know about your parliament, but for lefties, that's kind of that's what they do. That's modus operandi, and they're fascist. How dare you interrupt? When he's talking about death, I am the moral superior here.
Yeah,
right?
That's what it is, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. When he talks about People have died. Who? Which people? Where? Like, which? Like, if I just let me just put the video back on the screen and let's have a listen to what he's saying. Like he's someone put like steam coming up here.
Do I see steam coming up from?
Yeah.
Did you do that?
There's steam here too, right?
Beautiful.
Just listen closely to what he says, and because all of it is rhetoric, and he can't prove any of it.
It's literally cooking.
What is literally cooking? The planet is not literally cooking. Like cooking denotes a change of state of something where I can take a raw piece of meat, cook it, and now I can digest it, and it won't give me food poisoning. The planet is not cooking. It's rhetoric that doesn't make
it's
any
literally
sense.
It's like those guys that see, every word is everything is literally literally.
It's like it's strange. But listen closely to what he says and watch how easy it is to debunk, because it would be different if he was standing there holding a report in his hand saying, look, there's been 485 scientists that said this is happening, but he doesn't. Watch what he says.
Mate, you can shut your mouth. You can shut your mouth.
This is what they do.
How does he get away with like behavior like that in Parliament?
That's what they do. Well, whoever the president is of that, don't you guys have like somebody presiding over the?
Yeah, that's the lady going, hey, sit down, be quiet.
Oh, that is her. Okay, so she's the president. Well, well, then he is out of order, right? I mean,
completely.
Right, okay.
People are dying.
What people are dying, actually. So he's pointing and making an accusation on the public record as an elected member of Parliament, saying people are dying. That's a massive accusation. Who are dying? There's not a single person in Australia has died because of the weather.
This is like a child where he's not getting what he wants, so he's got to keep upping the game. He's got to and now it's up to people are dying, because you're not listening to me. You're not giving me what I want. So right? And they get
someone's
louder.
Gonna die.
They get louder and louder, and they throw a bigger tantrum. He's a child.
All right, ready? Let's unpick the next bit.
Resume your.
People are dying because of you, Senator Canavan.
There you go.
Well, Senator Canavan didn't hurt anybody. All he did was represent the people and the constituents that said, we don't believe in any of this. But then this guy is saying that Senator Canavan is responsible for people dying. Like, are you serious? No person in Australia would take any of that seriously.
And sociopaths like you.
Senator McKim.
You're not allowed to name call in Parliament.
Cop interjections from sociopaths like Senator Canavan.
Senator
I will
McKim, resume
not
your seat.
And what they've got to answer for is death.
Who died? Show me.
Yeah, who died? Yeah.
Who?
Disease.
What disease? What disease was caused by climate change? Prove it. Prove to me that it was caused by climate change.
Displacement.
Who was displaced because of climate change? Who exactly? Not a single person in Australia died, got a disease, or was displaced because of climate change. There might be a flood or a bushfire and they were displaced temporarily, but they went back to their house because the insurance policy paid for it.
Starvation.
Nobody in Australia is starved. Nobody in the world is starving because of climate change. It's just not true. It's just they're complete lies.
The people who will be starving from the,
from the power going off.
From the programs they want to implement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People dying of thirst.
Who died of thirst, man? Who? Show me on the record who died of thirst. You just can't prove it to me. You can't prove to me that anybody died of thirst. And even if someone did die of thirst, you can't say that happened because of climate change. I kicked my toe this morning, but that wasn't because of climate change. And if I said it was, and now I have to prove I kicked my toe because it was too cold outside or it was too hot. But it was nighttime, so why is that?
Arable farming lands.
What arable farming lands?
They're trying to destroy farmland.
Exactly. They're trying to get rid of farmlands and get rid of fertilizer.
Turning into desert and
what farmland turned into desert? Yeah, exactly.
Most likely billions of people dead by the
billions? Okay, how many? Okay, remind me, how many billions of people are there on Earth?
8.
8 billion people. And he said billions of people.
There's 25 million people in Australia.
There's no wonder why you will never, ever see these leftists in an actual debate. Never.
No. Not a single thing there. There's not one thing that he said in his screaming and shouting in his rant that he could prove. Not a single thing. And it's not up to me to disprove what his claim is. he's making the claim. It's up to him to show me that that's true, to convince me. Okay, maybe it is true. Maybe there are people that are dying of thirst. Where? Who? Show me.
Okay.
And if those people are dying of thirst in the Sahara Desert in Africa, well, don't fucking live in the Sahara Desert in Africa. What did you think was going to happen, you dumbass?
Yeah. Well, that's why you'll never see these people in a debate. Now, this is why people like him, they need the UN so much, and they need the WHO so much. They need the WEF so much, because they're going to use those as authoritative figures. According to the World Health Organization, according to the WEF, right? They use those as their sources of authoritative information. But that's
what Guterres did
bullshit.
in his speech.
But
exactly right.
Okay, but he has no. But it's all based on lies. So these people are reliant on these external organizations to give them cover for.
But the strange thing is, if you take that to its nth, Guterres is saying that we've moved from the era of global warming to global boiling. Okay, where did you get that information from? And he says all scientists agree that this is happening, and it's happening faster, and it's worse than we ever said. Okay, which scientist? Show me. Show me the list. Show me the website and the list of which scientists, because I can guarantee you that it's only like 3. And those 3 scientists are all funded by the United Nations. Even if there was 1,000 scientists there that said that, and we looked at where their funding come from, I guarantee you that it would all come from the United Nations, because the consensus that they get is bought. It's a purchased consensus. But help me here, Ed. Help me here, man, because like I'm really struggling and I need your help. How can these politicians in Parliament not see any of that? Like I'm just a regular, normal person living in society. I watch the news a little bit, and I kind of like laugh at these things because it's a bit of light entertainment for me. That's a strange thing to be entertained by, but people arguing. But it seems like this guy, Senator McKim or whatever the hell his name is, he seems to believe that everybody is going to die because of global boiling. It just seems absurd. But he doesn't take the time to actually look further upstream. Okay, Guterres said that the world was going to boil. Okay, cool. Where did he get that information from? Well, he got it from scientists. Okay, which ones? But where did those scientists get their money from? And then that's where it stops, right? Follow the money. What I need help with is understanding how naive these people are when they're just parroting the United Nations. So they don't realize that they're the Trojan horse of the United Nations governing Australia. But that's not what we elected. No one elected that guy to have the United Nations run their policies on everybody else. But that's what he's doing. So why would they be doing that?
Well, you see, this is the really big advantage to being an ideologue. Okay, you don't have to know what the.
It doesn't matter, right? Yeah,
right.
I just take it for what they say.
That's right. What ideologues do is they look for the marching order. They look for the problem. Okay, that's about, and then they work backward from there. Instead of following the facts and coming to a conclusion, they start with the conclusion and then they work backward from there. Now
they make up the facts.
That's right. They make up the facts, and they say, "Well, the facts are there. Just trust me, because I believe the WEF. I believe in WHO. You don't believe in the WHO. Who are you not to believe in the W? They're the World Health Organization. Who are you to argue? You know."
And this is the exact reason why I say, if you're a military age male, leave the military immediately. Do not join the army. Do not join the Navy. Do not join the Air Force. Do not join the military in any way, shape, or form. If you're in the police force, leave. If you're thinking about it being a police officer, do not be a police officer, because it's people like this that are going to enforce the rules. And if you find yourself in a position of authority as a cop or as a soldier or as a fighter pilot or somebody that's got his finger on the button to fire a missile, you're going to have to be listening to fools like this that have been driven by some ideology that you never signed on to. You never believed that. You were signing up because you want to protect and serve, or you're signing up because you want to serve your country and you want to go have a cool job. But the reality is that you're going to be governed by external forces that you simply cannot control, that you probably don't agree with. Leave the military immediately. Do not join the military. Do not join the police force, and leave the police force. Leave. Figure out what you're going to do with your life, but don't do those jobs. Do not be in a position where you're going to enforce some strange rules on society, because you're going to be no different to a guard in a concentration camp. You're exactly the same thing to me.
And if you're in the military or if you're in the police force and you're thinking, well, I've got family to support. I need a way to make a living. Rob and I have programs that help you make money online.
Exactly.
Reach out to us, man.
There's thousands of ways to do that. Right?
Yeah, we'll get you set up. There's always options. But when you are a police officer or you are in the military, you got to follow orders, and whether you like them or lump them, you're expected to follow them. And if you don't, there are consequences.
And that's why I say don't join, because we're on such a slippery slope that we can't get off. If there's a lockdown because of climate change and you're a police officer, are you seriously going to write people tickets because of climate change, because of the weather? That's where we're going. That's what you'll be required to do. There's a lockdown. You can't leave your home. You can't go any further than 5 minutes away from your house. You cannot leave your home. Why? Because of climate change. Are you fucking kidding me? And you're going to be somebody that enforces that rule? Yep. Are you serious? I don't know what happened in the camp, man. Like, the Jews did it to themselves. Like, I don't know, man. I was just there. I didn't do anything. The executions, yeah, I was there, but I didn't pull the trigger. It's just bullshit. Every police officer on planet Earth and every person in the military needs to read the book Ordinary Men, which explains how these police left Germany, went to Poland. They were too old to be soldiers, so they were cops already. They sent them over, take them out into the scrub, dig a ditch, make the Jews dig a ditch, and they shot them and killed them all. And they all said in the interviews, there's 60 or so people that are interviewed in that book, yeah, I was there, I saw that happen, but I never did any of it. And all of them denied it. But just because you were there and you didn't do it, even if that was true, which is not, does that make you complicit in the crime? Yes. If people are going to go to a lockdown because some strange ideologue is going to lock us down, then you must not enforce that law. You must not enforce people being locked in their homes, causing misery, pain, death, destruction because you want to keep your job. Are you kidding me? And you're going to let some green ideologue like this actually drive the way that you behave? Are you kidding me? What? Man.
Yeah,
it's a slippery slope in society, man. It's over.
And if we do have anybody in the military or in the police force out there in our audience listening, and you're involved in any kind of these enforcement actions during the worldwide flu, could you share with us, your experience? Did you feel like you were doing the right thing, or do you have regrets for what you did? We would love to hear from you. And maybe if you're willing to come on and appear as a guest, that'd be spectacular as well. But we would love to hear from anybody out there who is in any kind of enforcement action, whether it's military, whether it's police, or whether it's medical personnel. If you were caught up in that whole period there, and you found yourself doing things that you now regret because of that, please share your story. We would love to hear it.
I've shared my element of that before. I was in the military in a different time in the 1990s and the early 2000s, right? And I always remember my brother not being against what it was that I was doing, but asking, like, why would you want to do that? Like, he always found it like a little bit strange. Like, why? He never even understood, like, it's a cool job, man. I get to jump out of planes. I get to travel the world. I do all these things. Why would you? But they want you to go and kill people. Why would you want to ever go and do that? And at the time, I never realized what it was that he was saying to me because I was a little bit blinded to it and brainwashed by it. But when I look back at the history of my military career, I learned a lot of stuff. I grew up there and I had some amazing experiences and some incredible friends, but it's a giant regret I have in my life. I wish that I had have found media. I wish I had have found the arts. I wish I had went to university and studied something that was to do with media and arts and developed a different career that wasn't dictated to me by what uniform I had to wear or what hat I had to have or what gun I had to have in my hands. And my brother was right the whole time. I look back at those times and now I compare them to these times and I think, you know what? I'm never, ever going to wear those medals that I have in my drawer ever again. I can just fucking throw them in the shit tin tomorrow. I couldn't care less. My time in the military is not something that I'm proud of anymore because this is, I once was proud of that. But now I've got to the point in my life where I look at it and go, that was a categorical mistake that I made as a young person. And if I could go back and change things, would I do it all again? The answer is no. Absolutely no way I would ever recommend that to anybody or to do that. And that's because people like this guy in Parliament are getting up and screaming and shouting, saying that billions of people on planet Earth are going to die because of the weather. But we can't even predict with any sort of accuracy what the weather's going to be in 7 days' time.
Yeah.
We can only do it to about 3 days. We can't do it in 7 days because of the way the mathematics works. But he knows that. But he said billions of people are going to die. And you're in the military pointing a gun at someone or a missile or you're going to shoot somebody and take somebody's life because people like that are driving it.
Yeah. You're going to follow that guy's orders?
Yeah, I know. Is
that what you want?
And he's the one in Parliament voting for those things. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, I got sorry, go ahead.
Or what if someone like him was actually PM? What if? Right?
Well, we do. We have someone exactly like that, Anthony Albanese from the Green Left, who's implementing policies that's systematically destroying Australia. It's ridiculous. All right, I got something from the other side of politics. Alex Antek here, and he does a good job retorting this guy.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced that the era of global warming has ended and the era of global boiling has arrived, and it's terrifying. Now, we know that the climate alarmists terrify people with their language, but even by their own standards, this latest foray into the catastrophic language is pretty outrageous. It's quite frankly sent the left in this building off like a rocket. They've been running around all week, waving their arms around like the robot from Lost in Space, and it's all because of this, I believe. But you see, this isn't about facts, and it isn't about data, science or the environment. It's about politics, control and fear. And the alarmists need to remain fresh with their language to stay on the cutting edge. Otherwise, some other activists will crawl out from their mum's basement and take their mantle as the chief alarmist. So when I was a kid in the 1980s, Madam Acting Deputy President, they used the term greenhouse effect. But who's going to fear that? Greenhouse is a friendly place. So when the greenhouse effect became defunct, they started using global warming. But you're not going to frighten kids with that, so they moved on to climate change, and then they could blame a snowstorm and a hurricane from climate change. But they needed to grow the fear exponentially, and then we got climate crisis, climate emergency, climate breakdown, and even climate apocalypse. But the question really is where to from here? And so I've taken the liberty of coming up with 5 suggested names that I think will be much more terrifying so that the UN can use them in advance. I've come up with, number 1, global climate inferno, which sounds pretty terrifying. Number 2, mega universe heat death. That one should work. Number 3, super global spine-chillingly hot, which I think might terrify the kids. Stop using your stove, you capitalists. I reckon that one will work. And then the final one that I held up for consideration is you will die soon, which I think should do the job. Terrify everybody, inform nobody. That's the way of the world now.
Yep. You will die soon. I love it. I think I just found my next thumbnail. You will die.
Him holding it up, pointing it out.
Yeah. You will die soon. You know, I was joking to you yesterday about, I had this image from that movie, Christmas Story. And it felt like, because there's a protocol when you're a kid, when you're trying to insult them, and you try up and I dare you, I double dare you, I triple dare
dog dare you,
triple dog dare you, and he skipped one, and everyone realized these guys, they're jumping around. I think you just get this feeling that these guys are gone too far. They've gone over,
Yeah, another way to describe it is you oversourced the pudding. Yeah, the pudding was delicious, but you just oversourced it. You had the balance right, but no, everyone's going, you're not boiling. If you look at Twitter, there's like people posting pictures of the snow and rain and all sorts of stuff, and they're like, global boiling? Man, I'm more likely to freeze here than I am to boil. Like, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous.
We should point out to everyone, because you mentioned earlier how, it's chilly where you are right now. You're in Australia, so you're having your winter. Right. So this is the time of the year in Minnesota where it is notoriously hot and humid. July and August are our hottest months, which is true for most of America, right? And most of the northern hemisphere, right? So you being in the south, it's the opposite. So there are people in the world where you're not having your hottest month in 120,000 years.
The coldest, actually. Yeah, the coldest winter we've had here in Australia certainly in New South Wales, for I think for about 40 years or something.
So what's the temperature today?
So the temperature now, it must be like 10 degrees Celsius, something like 10
degrees. Oh,
yeah. So
let me go ahead. I got to turn on my phone. I need to check Siri. See,
10 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit is like 50. So 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that's your coldest winter?
Yeah, like I'll go for a workout after this, and I'll put like shorts and a t-shirt on and just like a hoodie, and I'll get to the end of the street and take my hoodie off because it's warm. It's not cold. And If you go a little bit further south, it gets colder than that as well. But the coldest it probably gets on the coast, you'd be nudging up maybe.
What's the temperature in Sydney, Australia?
What's it giving you?
1 sec. In Sydney, Australia, it's 48 degrees.
Yeah, see?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, so what is
48,
that?
48
so
degrees. Well, that's Fahrenheit. So
that's 8 degrees right now.
It does have the Celsius here. It's,
8.
8. So 48 degrees. So, okay.
Still run around in shorts and a t-shirt for a workout. It's a bit chilly if you're sitting around, but it's not cold, man. Yeah.
What's the record low temperature for Sydney, Australia?
Here's an answer.
Well, I need to turn the volume up so you can.
What does it say? Are we in the era of global boiling? Guterres has got it all wrong, man. It's not true.
What's the record low temperature for Sydney, Australia?
Here's what I found from Wikipedia. The lowest recorded minimum at Observatory Hill was 2.1 degrees Celsius, 35.8 degrees Fahrenheit, on June 22nd, 1932.
Okay.
While the coldest in the Sydney
1932.
area was negative 8 degrees
It's not even freezing, right?
1932. 35 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 degrees Celsius.
Not even freezing.
Not even freezing. 38 degrees.
He must be right. Guterres is right. We must be in the era of global boiling. It doesn't even get to freezing here in Sydney.
Yeah. Well, and you have to go back to 1932 to find the lowest record.
It's ridiculous.
Come on, guys. Crack open a book. Talk to Siri. Okay.
Exactly. You can debunk it all there. Let me move on. Let me move on from there, Ed, because I got a little bit of a serious thing here to go with. It's a bit of a serious overtone. It's all funny, and we're poking fun at it. We've been poking fun at it for the last 20 minutes. But the reality is it's actually very serious. And let me show you a video exactly why it's so serious, because this is where the Green left want us to go. And if you think this is not happening in Australia, you're wrong. This is happening right now.
What your opinion is on 15-minute cities. This is something that I guess it's a new idea that we're only beginning to hear about. Maybe you can actually remind us what they are. And I understand they're coming in Europe now. There's legislation pushing in that direction already.
Yes, it is. The digital green certificate, the COVID pass, that was a test balloon to get people to having to produce some kind of a QR code, just getting people used to that. Now what they're slamming us with is these 15-minute cities. Make no mistake, it's not about your convenience. It's not that they want you to be able to, have all of these places that you need to get to very close. And it's not about saving the planet either, by the way. The 15-minute cities, they will have to have those before they can lock you down. And that's what we're talking about here. So in Great Britain, some county already passed legislation. They will be able to impose a climate lockdown. That's the next step. That's what we're talking about. So in order to do that, they will have to have these 15-minute cities. The next step then, of course, will be you are only allowed to leave your immediate area for, let's say, 2 or 3 times a year. So, but there's other people that may have more money, and they can actually buy your passings off of you. So guess what? The poor people will be left in these 15-minute neighborhoods, while the ones that are better off get to go wherever they want to go. So this is what we're talking about, Look at Saudi Arabia, for instance. They're pulling up Neom City. They call it the Line. So this is like a structure in the middle of the desert, 200 kilometers long, 200 meters wide, 500 meters high, and it will house up to 9 million people. Oh, isn't that just brilliant? If I wanted to get total control of the people, that's exactly where and how I would house them. Yep. And then having them on a 3 meals a day prescription. Well, guess what will happen if you do not do as you are told? They will probably cancel that. It's so easy. So that's what we're talking about. And when you really take all of this together, there is no other way for me to actually say this. It will be a complete impoverishment and enslavement of all the people.
Yep. Amen.
If you think that that's not real,
if
you think that that's not coming, that it's here.
Yeah. Well, when was that? when was that interview? Do you know?
I think yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. Because there are, I think, 15 cities already in the UK who have either passed 15-minute city ordinances or they're on the ballot to be. And there is some pushback. So this is serious. I mean, I'm glad you brought that one up, but there's so much other stuff like farms.
But that's what they're gunning for with this climate change stuff. The climate change is so bad you can't have a car. You don't need a car because everything's within 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think this is not real, let me share a little experience with you that I had a couple of years ago, because I was watching that video earlier and I thought I'll use that today for the podcast. And as I was thinking about that, I recall a time where here in Sydney, Ed, we've had a debate for the last, literally since the 1940s, about building another international airport in Sydney. You would think that a modern first world country like Australia would have, in its biggest city, more than one airport. And we do. We've got Sydney Airport, Bankstown Airport. But Bankstown Airport's too small to take airliners. It could take like domestic kind of small turboprops, but it couldn't take airliners. We've got Richmond RAF Base. But now we have an airport called Badgerys Creek, which sits on the very western edge of Sydney and at the base of the Blue Mountains. So it's not an ideal place to build an airport for a variety of different reasons, and that debate had been going on since the 1940s. So eventually the Morrison government kind of bit the bullet and was clever enough to say, okay, we want to have a bigger city, we want to have a better economy, this is what we're going to build. And they're building this thing called the Aerotropolis. So the Aerotropolis is, you think of an airport as a major hub, right? And you think of cargo planes coming and going and everything like that. The cargo's got to go somewhere, right? So they pull the cargo out of the airport and it gets built into all the industrial areas around there. But then they want to build, the Aerotropolis has a bunch of other things there as well. It's like a business center. It's really good. If you're coming from another state, fly into Badgerys Creek, come out, you're 2 minutes away from there. And we're going to build a fast train that gets you to the city in 20 minutes, no stop, straight to Central Station, you're good to go. So there's a whole lot of really good things that they're doing from a development perspective like that. And you think from the economy and, government finally got their act together and decided they were going to do this. It was going to happen eventually, and it happened eventually. So it's all a good thing. And I remember a couple of years ago, I used to be the boss of Australian Aviation. So that's the biggest aviation magazine in Australasia and in this part of the world, in the Southern Hemisphere, really. But it died on the vine because print media went away, right? And it was acquired by a couple of other companies. So I came in and I was working with my mate Boo for a little while, and we were trying to keep this thing on life support and making it work. And one of the things that I was doing was podcasting there. I think I recorded something like 150 shows or something, right? I was a podcaster, and it was a dream come true for me because I get to talk to pilots all day long. I get to talk about aviation and everything to do with the industry. And I was an airplane nerd from, when I was a little kid. So it was such a great role. And then being on the forefront of media in aviation in this part of the world, it was something I just really loved. It was the exact thing that I should have been doing with my life at the time. But I was lucky enough to go and sit down with the boss of Badgerys Creek Airport. Yeah. And so this is the guy that's been appointed by the bureaucracy to head up the project. And this is like a giant infrastructure project, man. And it's really super interesting hearing about how they're building the airport and how they flatten the land for the runways and what they're building. And, here's all these fantastic CAD designs and how they come to life and how much it stimulates the economy and how big the workforce is. It was really good. But he inserted in there that, nothing will be 15 minutes or more away. And I remember as I left there, he had a minder, right? He had an executive assistant, and I was just chatting to her, and she said, "Oh, that was a really good interview, Rob. You did a good job there." And I recorded the podcast. I took that, I handed it off to the journalists, and they wrote it into an article and stuff like that. And it was really good. I was proud of it because you're talking to somebody really senior about one of the most influential infrastructure projects in all of the country, and I get to be the journalist that goes to do and does that. So I was proud of myself and proud of that. And just chatting with her, she said, "Yeah, this is part of the New South Wales government policy for 15-minute cities." And I'd never heard of it before. And I remember thinking, "What's that?" And she goes, "Well, we don't want you to be any further away from anything on public transport than 15 minutes. And I said, "Well, that's not true because I can't get to Mascot Airport on the train in 15 minutes. It takes me probably 45 minutes to an hour to get there, and I couldn't get to Badgerys Creek by doing that. Even if you had a direct train to it, I'd still have to take 45 minutes to get to Central Station and then travel west to Badger East Creek, which would probably take another 45 minutes. So the 15-minute city is a load of shit. And she said, not so much with, infrastructure and trying to get the hell out of here, like going to the airport, but everything that you want to live in. I said, I live in a 15-minute city anyway. I live in a 3-minute city. I live 3 minutes away from the shop, and I'm 3 minutes away from the beach, and I'm 1 minute away from the park, and I'm everywhere. And she said, no, we want you to work and live and be within a 15-minute radius of your house.
Yes.
And at the time, I thought, what a good idea. And I remember at the time I had another office in Parramatta. And Parramatta is like the center of Sydney geographically. And my brother and I had an office there on I think it was like the 15th floor or something, right? And you'd look out over Parramatta facing the north and the west. And I remember at one point I counted about 25 cranes on the horizon because they pulled the whole thing down and they were rebuilding it all into high rises and offices and everything like that. And you could get a good deal on office space and a commercial lease in that part of the world because they were kind of encouraging you to go there, and the public transport was great. It's a beautiful place to be around. The infrastructure is great. And when I go back there now, 15 years later, 10 years later, it is it's a really beautiful place. They've done a really good job of modernizing it. But if you had to live within 15 minutes of the Parramatta CBD, you're in Western Sydney, and it's like you'd be trapped. There's nice parks and there's a bit of river and stuff like that there, but it's pretty concrete jungle. There's not much there. And can you go to the Blue Mountains? No, because it's more than 15 minutes away. Can you get to the ocean? No, it's more than 15 minutes away. And then I started to realize that they want us to be within 15 minutes of where we live and we work for convenience. Okay, it seems convenient, but now I know, way back when, if I rewind the clock to when that was, I don't know, maybe 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, like that, they were talking about 15-minute cities. So this has been going on for a little while.
Yep.
And I've had personal experience with it, with the bureaucracy of New South Wales government and federal government saying that that's what they're actually trying to do. It is a real thing. It's really happening. And they're going to use climate as the excuse to bring this to the front and get rid of your car. That's the first thing they're going to get rid of.
Yep. Your car, your house, your farm, boy, this is scary. It's scary and maddening stuff. This is sad time for humanity. If we don't get it right, if we don't push back, if we don't get this right, our kids, our children, they're going to be slaves. They may not be digging ditches and making bricks out of straw, but they're going to be slaves. They're going to have a different idea of what freedom is. They're going to be in a glass menagerie. They're going to live in these prisons. We're all going to be inside prisons. They're going to be and the way they're conditioning us, a lot of people are going to accept it as a necessary evil in order to save the world, because otherwise the world's going to boil. So we have to do it. Now, there's one final point I want to make on this is, so John Kerry, one of the most evil people in the world, one of the top 10 evil people in the world. He's our climate czar, and he was giving a speech the other day, and I'm probably going to do a video on it pretty soon, where he was saying, listen to this circular logic he uses. Okay, so we are the climate is, we're in a climate crisis. He called it. He says, we're not in climate change. We're in climate crisis. He's so proud of himself that he thought of this term. We're in climate crisis. And he gave a figure. This is the hottest we've ever been. And if we don't take these steps, then the average temperature globally is going to rise by 2 degrees. And if that happens, 580,000 or 580 million people are going to starve. He's throwing numbers out like they're definitive answers, and he knows that he knows what the consequences are going to be. So, in order to avoid that, the farmers have to give up their land. They can't, and they have to build housing on this land. And he
Did he really say that?
Yeah, he said we have to reduce agriculture because agriculture creates too much CO2.
Because people are eating.
Right. So we have to get rid of agriculture because people are starving. Well, wait a minute. People are starving, so you want to
which people are starving? And if people are starving, then you're going to reduce the food output. You're going to make more people starve.
Well, I know that this guy. I don't know if this guy
can't hear himself.
I don't know if is he that stupid
Yes.
Did somebody write up the speech for him and gave it to him and he didn't even bother to read it? And he's this, or does he really believe? Look, he's all set. He's married to a billionaire, right? And so he's all set. He's never going to stop eating his steaks. He's never going to give up his beachfront house on Martha's Vineyard. He's never going to suffer the consequences. And that's the thing with these elitists. But these are powerful people. Yeah. And he's part of the WEF cabal. The WEF, look, if you took all these world elites that are creating these dystopian policies that are change our lives forever, you're probably talking like, I don't know, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people total.
There's not
world,
many of them,
right?
Yeah,
so that elite class, you're talking maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5,000 people max. You know, the right CEOs and the right PMs and the right ministers, right? 4,000 or 5,000 people, and the other 8 billion of us, we're going to suffer the consequence. But so
you've heard Klaus Schwab's brain. Yuval Noah Harari. You know that guy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's that bald guy. He's Israeli, and he wrote the book called *Sapiens*. And so it's said that he's like Klaus Schwab's brain. That's how Alex Jones describes him. But I think a lot of what he says is actually true and is coming true. And one of the things that they talk about is you'll own nothing and be happy. And we're moving to a point of where we integrate with technology and we go to the next level. And it goes back to the very heart of that Australian professor who wrote the book called The Artilect War, where there's going to be the Terrans and there's going to be the Artilects, and you're part robot, you're part cyborg, you've got a chip in your brain, you're connected to that, you've got a thing in your hand, that's how you pay for everything, that's how you do everything. And so the reason I say that a lot of what he's saying is coming true, and he's actually right about a lot of that, and I think he's a jerk, by the way, so let me just put that out there as well, is because I've been helping somebody in the last couple of days write a script for a video about a course in ChatGPT. So this fella has a course in Udemy, and he's pretty big there already. He's got a couple of other courses going on. He's got, 100,000 sales or something like that, and he wants me to write his script for him. And okay, cool, I can help you out do that. And so I was playing with it yesterday, and I was thinking, why would somebody want to do his course over the other courses? So I went away and did a whole bunch of research, and I was watching a bunch of different videos and thinking to myself, what is it that I could use to actually create urgency to get somebody to click and to buy the course? Well, first of all, you show people what's in the course, but the urgency is about protecting your own skin and self-preservation. And the reason I say that is because AI is developing at such a rapid pace, and I play with it every single day because it's part of what I do in my day job. And every single day I'm playing with this, and every day that I'm using it, I'm thinking, I'm becoming more redundant by the day. And the only thing that I could think of to protect my intellectual property would be to build a brand. The only thing that I could do is to build a brand and own a brand about anything. It doesn't matter what that is. The unspoken truth is a brand. AI can never steal my brand. They can never take it away. It can take the intellectual property that's within the brand to actually do that. So here's where I arrived and why I think Harari is actually right in what he's saying. It's only a matter of time before AI eats your lunch in some way, shape, or form. I was playing with a piece of software yesterday that you could use to record a podcast with. So it's just AI voice, but it sounds like definitely human. And I thought to myself, that's an easier way to record a podcast. Why don't I just grab the text, the news reports, the articles. I put all those news reports and articles together. I use ChatGPT to spin the stories, and I feed it to that machine. It creates the podcast. I upload it, done. I don't have to say a word, but I could come off way more intellectual and way more articulate if I did something like that. So where I arrived with this course content was to say that unless you get involved with artificial intelligence in some way, shape, or form, what's going to happen is it's going to master you. And when it masters you, what's going to happen is you're going to become redundant. And when you're redundant and you're obsolete, in your obsolescence, you'll be discarded to the edges of society. So if you're a lawyer, if you're a writer, if you're an accountant, if you're an artist, if you do something with your brain that requires you to type on a computer, you are now obsolete. In 2023, you're obsolete. Because there's people out there that have mastered technology, that have mastered prompt engineering in ChatGPT, and we're in the genesis of that. We're in the first year of that, but they've mastered that technology to make you redundant. So virtually everything that we do in our society is based on somebody's intellectual property and their idea of being able to do something. And if your IP is no longer safe and you no longer have IP because you're going to be replaced by a robot, you'll be obsolete. So Harari is correct when he says that people will be sitting around in white robes, drinking tea all day, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, because they don't actually have to go to work. You don't have to go to work. And he says, we're going to give them video games to entertain them and virtual reality headsets to entertain them because they don't have to go to work because the robots have completely replaced them. And in my journey of doing this, I came across this really funny thing. It's something out of that movie Total Recall. You know, you look back to the 1990s and there's an Arnie movie and they have this funny like special effects and these technology that they've got going on. It was a robotic cafe, and it was a cafe and ice cream stand. And essentially what it was a screen and there's like an effigy of a robot that's there, but it's just a computer. And there's like these little arms like you'd see in a production factory. And it'd go over, pick up the cup, or it'd give you the cone and the ice cream, you'd pay your money, and then it'd hand it over to you. So people and it makes the most delicious coffee you've ever had. Everyone that's had a coffee from it are like, oh my God, you've perfected that. That's way better than any barista. So people that work in cafes, if you think that you're a barista and you can never be made redundant, you've already been made redundant. It's just the scale of the rollout of something like that hasn't reached a point that it's affected you. But Harari is correct when he says that you will be obsolete and you probably will play video games all day and wear a virtual reality headset like in that Steven Spielberg movie, the Ready Player One. That's what it actually is moving towards. And the powers that be, those 3,000 people that you mentioned, Ed, those people are going to say, there's too many people here. We just need to discard these people. We only need about 10% of them to keep the world going, which equates to about 500 million people is what they want to keep on planet Earth. And the rest of you, you're going to fade away into obsolescence through starvation, through war, through disease, and a series of other things. And if you think that that's not happening, you're wrong. It's happening right now.
It is happening.
People in our parliament are screaming and shouting about it, but you're not going to die because of the weather. You're not going to die because of some fake pandemic that's coming down the pike at you. It's just not true. But they are moving the entire society towards that. And you are being made obsolete and redundant now.
Well, listen, they're destroying our farmland, right? They're culling our cattle. And I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to introduce a virus into these cows so that we have to kill the cows.
Well, what they'll do is they'll put the theory is that they jab them with mRNA vaccinations, right? And those mRNA vaccinations get into the food supply, and that causes you all sorts of problems when you eat that meat. So the way that they're going to stop you from eating meat is by poisoning the meat, because if you eat that meat, you're going to get sick.
Yeah. Well, even you told me about that tick-borne disease that you have there in Australia.
Mammalian meat disease, mammalian meat allergy. Yeah.
So you get, if they find a way to spread that particular little niche.
No more beef, man. We just don't need to eat it. I actually physically can't eat it because I've got a bacteria inside me that makes me sick when I do eat it.
Well, not you. You're paraphrasing, right?
Yeah, that's what would happen if you did that. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy.
So things like that can happen. Don't put anything beyond these people. And a lot of the stories that you and I talk, they're kind of like eye rollers. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Whatever. Come on.
But it's actually happening.
It's actually happening. We can't make this stuff up. We don't have to make stuff up. The truth is entertaining all by itself enough.
I want to go and put my head back in the sand and I want to, it's like I'll close out the show with this. It's like that guy in the Matrix. He goes, I just put me back in there, man. I just want to eat a steak again. I just want to And he turns on the team, right? He's like one of the agents, and they put him back in there. And he's like, that's where I want to be. I want to go back there.
There's something to be said for that. I mean, everyone would say, that's not me, man. I want my freedom. I want my individuality.
No, bullshit, man. I want to go right back to 2014.
There you go.
And none of this ever happened.
People are liars. Everybody lies.
Right, my final comment, I'll give you a second to collect your thoughts there. My final comment is, ladies and gentlemen, whatever happens, you're not going to die because of the weather. That's just not going to happen. You might die in a weather-related incident, in a cyclone or a bushfire or something like that, but climate change is not what's going to kill you. And there's just no plausible way that anybody making that claim can say that hurricane, that cyclone, that bushfire, that whatever happened because of climate change. You just cannot prove it beyond reasonable doubt. And the reason I know that is because you can't predict the weather in any sort of level of accuracy more than about 7 days in advance. That's why the weather report only has 7 days on it, because it cannot be predicted with any sort of accuracy. The longer it goes on, the more inaccurate it becomes because of the mathematical models that they use. So don't buy into the fact that they can model what's going to happen by the end of the century and billions of people will die. It's just not true. It can't be done. Models don't work, and every model that they've ever created has been a complete, total, and absolute failure.
Okay, and I guess my final thought would be, listen, we are going to be having designs put on our lives in a very big way in the future here. Everything from what kind of money you can use, to what kind of food you can eat, to what kind of house you can live in, to what kind of car you can drive, if you're allowed to drive at all, what kind of city you're allowed to live in, and you have to be aware. Don't fall for these psyops anymore. These are all big psyops, events. What happened there with the worldwide flu, that was the most successful psyop operation in history.
Indeed.
And there was a huge success from the point of view of the people who conducted the psyop. Okay. It's very depressing for people like me. Now, Rob and I didn't fall for it, and all we can do here, we're trying to do the best we can to strip the varnish off of the story that the media keeps giving you. Don't believe the headlines. It's always a lie. If you use that as your starting assumption, you'll be better off. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be right.
That's a nice way to round it out, I reckon. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget we're available as a podcast. So head on over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Come on over to Twitter and follow us, and we're over on Telegram as well. Just take a little look in the description. All of the links are there. All right, Ed, let's get out of here. We'll see you next time, mate. Bye for now.
God save the Queen.
God save the Queen.